The decision last week of 3 actors in the Sydney Theatre Company's new production of the Chekhov play The Seagull to wear the Palestinian scarf known as the keffiyeh during curtain call sparked a frenzy of condemnation from members of the Jewish community, resignations from the STC board and withdrawal of donor support. Louise Adler has been involved in the arts sector for over 30 years as a board member and book publisher and is currently director of Adelaide Writers' Week. Her view on the place of politics in the arts is also informed by her own family history. Louise Adler, what was your response when you saw this controversy break out last week over the Sydney Theatre Company curtain call?
Well, I was rather surprised by the media reports, and if I can believe the media reports, it seemed to me that STC management wasn't taking great care over supporting their actors, that they seemed to be more concerned with pacifying donors who objected to the actors donning keffiyehs as they took their curtain calls. So I was rather surprised by that. The attention seemed to be on donors taking their checkbooks and walking away. And I think arts organisations need to have some clarity about the moral compromises they're prepared to make when they take donors' support, if you like, or funding. That comes with contradictions and compromises that need to be made. And I didn't see in the STC media reports that there was a great deal of attention paid to the artists and their right to have an opinion when they took a curtain call.
Is it reasonable, nonetheless, to say, well, the audience is taking offence and we have to take that seriously?
So the question is, why would the audience take offence? Here we were with a group of actors, 3 actors if I'm correct, 3 actors who declared at their curtain call that we stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people and what is going on under occupation at this point in time. And for donors, in the main captains of industry with the capacity to support the arts, to feel threatened by that declaration in the comfort of an air-conditioned theatre seems to me to be remarkable and disturbing.
So should artists and actors be bringing their own personal or political views into the theatre?
Actors, artists, writers have always had political views. I mean, the history is long of artists being part of the world that they live in and bringing that world into the work they make. Picasso, Guernica, Goya's The Horrors of War, Percy Shelley saying that artists are the acknowledged legislators of the world, and the writers who declared that they took sides in the Spanish Civil War. There is a long and honourable and important tradition of artists being engaged in the world they inhabit, and art that is not made of this world, that doesn't take into account this world, feels to me rather vacuous. And I'm not sure what we expect from contemporary theatre if we don't expect artists to engage with the issues of the day.
So this was a particular issue amongst the Jewish community, a lot of Jewish supporters of the theatre, of the STC, a lot of patrons said that they were really confronted by this. Why is it that this issue, and at this point of time, seems so contentious?
Well, I think it's not just at this point in time. There's been a long and assiduous campaign by those who support Israel and its governments, successive governments and policies, to suggest that any criticism of Israel is intolerable and inappropriate. And that's that project, if you like, that I would say agenda, has been crucial in promoting a conflation of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. So if you have problems or criticisms of the State of Israel, you're deemed an anti-Semite now. So it becomes impossible to have the discussion. It becomes impossible to be a critic of Israel and its occupation, if we want to be so specific at this point in history. So that seems to me the subtext, if you like, to the grievance today that we're discussing, which is that it was inappropriate for actors to bring their solidarity with the Palestinian people and their suffering under occupation to a moment in contemporary theatre.
So we've seen a growing number of protests from both sides of conflict in the Middle East in recent years, making their way into cultural events in Australia. We saw a very aggressive push to get people to boycott the Sydney Festival a couple of years ago from people who were worried that it was being subsidised by the Israeli embassy. And then earlier this year, there was pressure on the Adelaide Writers' Week and on you as its director because you'd invited some Palestinian writers. Can you just talk through us what happened in the case of Adelaide Writers' Week?
Yes, and I should be clear here that I'm speaking as the current director of Writers' Week, but I'm not speaking in this discussion we're having tonight as a representative of the Adelaide Festival. It comes from my own long history in the arts and cultural space and my engagement with the Israel lobby. It goes all the way back to the early 2000s when the Israeli ambassador decided or demanded a meeting with me, a private meeting with me, after I'd written a review of Edward Said's memoir. And he demanded that I not air Israel's dirty linen in public. That was one of my early experiences of being told that we don't talk about Israel and our criticism of Israel in the public sphere. Fast forward a decade perhaps, and when I publish a book by Anthony Lowenstein about the Israel lobby, federal MPs feel it's incumbent upon them to write to the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Melbourne and demand that I be sacked. And then let's fast forward to Adelaide Writers' Week when we decide that it is important to feature Palestinian literary culture as part of our program. And the Israel lobby decided that was reprehensible, that they did not like the views of individual Palestinians. They didn't approve of them, and let's take them seriously. They have every right not to approve of those Palestinian writers and their views on the current state of state in the Middle East. And they're perfectly entitled to those views, but they were not entitled, in my view, to say that those Palestinian writers should not therefore be included in a literary festival celebrating a very rich literary culture that was Palestinian literary culture. There was a barrage of letters to the Adelaide Festival Board. There were letters and op-eds and news articles in all the media, but particularly in News Limited, that went on and on for days. There was demands on sponsors that they withdraw their funding from Adelaide Festival. And there was pressure put on the Premier of South Australia, even. It went that far. And thankfully, the board was resolute, the Adelaide Festival was resolute, that this was an opportunity for people to hear Palestinians talk about their writing.
As a Jewish Australian, I wonder how you see what has been happening in terms of the capacity for people to speak out and your own family's history.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a tragedy that we are being silenced, if you like, that the concern for peace and justice in the Middle East is suppressed, the wish that we should have peace and justice and a self-determination for Palestinian people in the Middle East, that everybody should live in peace and security, that's suppressed. That can't be discussed here. What it means to live under occupation cannot be discussed here. Everybody brings their own personal history to these issues. If one is, Jewish or one is Palestinian or one is from the Middle East, one brings one's personal history. My grandfather was murdered in Birkenau because he was Jewish. My father entered the resistance in Paris when he was 14 years of age. And his legacy to me is that it is important and it is vital for us not to look away, that we all have a choice. That the world looked away during the Second World War and Jews, 6 million of our people, were murdered in that looking away, and that it is incumbent upon humanity to look at what is happening in Gaza now and to say, we will not accept this. We will say no, not in our name.
Louise Adler, thank you so much for speaking to us tonight.
Thank you.